The campground is located east of Los Angeles, west of Palm Springs, and it's in the Mount San Jacinto State Park. The campground has 50 sites with 3 bathrooms, potable water stations, and it has RV hookups as well as dry tent sites. This is site number 1, and this is a handicap spot. Big pad here for an RV, and then plenty of room back there if you needed to put another tent up. Picnic table, though, is not in the shade. Site number 2, park right here, and come over and I guess you would put your tent up right over here. Plenty of room there, nice and flat. Site number 3, and it's a big site. Picnic table, though, is in the sun, but lots of room to set up a tent. This is site number 4. Nice paved, long, pretty flat driveway for an RV or a trailer. And it looks like over here is your picnic table. And there are some nice flat areas here as well. Like you could put a tent over here, although it'd be a little bit close to the road. Pretty secluded overall, except right there is your next door neighbor. And but it's a nice site, especially if you have an RV. And then, yeah, there's a little trail that takes you back over to the restrooms. Although if you're in an RV, you probably have your own restroom on board. Nice trees here on the site too. This is site number 5. Big area paved for an RV and a vehicle, and then looks like you walk down the hill and there's your picnic table, a couple of short trees around it, but not a lot of shade, and don't really see a spot for a tent, so this would be more of an RV spot. Site number 6. Looks like you pull your vehicle up here on the dirt, on the not too terrible of a slope, but there is a slope. And then you walk up a small hill here. And this is your site. Picnic table. Looks pretty shady. Bear box. Looks like it works. And I think the best spot to pitch a tent would be here or back further. You could put a 2-person tent here and 4 to 8-person tent further back. This is site number 7. Big area here for your vehicle or even an RV. And looks like 2 picnic tables. The bigger one further back is in pretty good shade, and I can see many places here for putting up a tent, and it's a big site. There is some privacy to it as well. This is site number 8. You pull up in here, and then you walk up through a little shaded area, kind of cool. Wow, forest of some very unusual trees. And you come back in here. Oh wow, picnic table in the shade, area right over here for your tent, or you could even go further back over there, it looks like. I don't see, well, there's your next door neighbor. site through those trees, but a pretty good distance away. This is an awesome site if you like these really unusual trees, which I think are really cool. Right across from site number 8 is a sign, looks like it takes you on a hiking trail. Sawmill Flats, 1.7 miles. Marion Mountain Campground, 2.9 miles. Here is site number 9. Big area for your vehicle. Slopes though on this side. I'm not sure. You could maybe put a RV or a trailer there. And then big area there with looks like you get a decent amount of shade there at your picnic table. And it looks like it has a functioning bear box. In terms of flat ground for a tent, I think maybe over here between those two trees, but this is a pretty slopey site. Site number 10, big area for a vehicle or trailer, and then you walk down over here into the site. Picnic table is under a big tree, but at least in the morning time it looks like you don't get shade there. I do see an area over here on the right further back which looks like it would be fairly flat for a tent, and you're also not too far away from the bathroom over there. Nice shade over here under these trees if you also wanted to set up your chairs over here. Number 11 has a little area here, not really flat for just a vehicle. And then looks like 2 picnic tables and big slope over here. But I think further back over that way, I see a few flat areas, which would be a nice shady area for a tent. This is site number 12. Big area here for an RV. And then you walk down the hill here into the site. Picnic table has awesome shade. And I think over there to the left, beyond the picnic table, looks like a nice flat area. And I see a second flat area behind the 2 trees, which are just behind the picnic table. And that would be a real shady place. And you're 120 feet away from the bathroom area. This is some parking. Looks like it takes you up to a trail. And handicap parking over here on this side. And up here is a big sign, Mount San Jacinto State Park Panorama Point Trail, which takes you up that way. And see if they say how long it is. Looks like it's a loop trail, and you pull off a little bit about halfway through to go out to a viewpoint. 110-foot gain. Oh, it's 1 mile long, so that's a real short hike. Beginner hike. Site number 16 has a dumpster out in front of it. Big area for parking or for an RV. And then you walk down into the site, and picnic table doesn't look like it gets shade for at least the first half of the day. It is near a few big trees. And then further out that way to the left is the bathroom. And I do see a few flat areas for a tent, but pretty open area. And you're not too far from your neighbor there. Here's a water station. Just looks like potable water, just to the right of number 17. And number 17, you park just off the road here. And then Looks like you go up the hill here. Picnic table completely in the shade. And it looks like a nice flat area over here on the left with some pretty cool trees around you for your tent. And then just a little further up the hill here is where the nature hike starts that I just showed you. This is site number 18. Big area for a pull-out trailer. And then lots of big trees back in here. Looks like decent shade for your picnic table. And I think maybe, I'm not seeing a huge amount of flat area here. You might be able to find some over to the right there, but that's questionable if you need to use a tent for this site. Site number 19, pull out here, and picnic table and is up in here. Looks like it's decent shade there. And then back over, further back into the left up there looks like a pad area for your tent. And I think if you go up that little path there, that probably connects you to that trail that we were talking about. Site number 20 has a pretty big pull-out area here. And you come up the hill here. It's a pretty secluded area for your picnic table. It's completely in the sun. And then I see a couple of nice good sized areas for tents up here. This is site number 21. Nice pretty flat area here for a RV or a trailer. Plenty of parking. And then looks like you get a couple of picnic tables here, bare box. Big flat area further out if you need a tent, but you can see your neighbor's site about 100 feet away. Site number 23, nice big area, flat area here for a RV or a trailer. Picnic table is under a huge pine tree. 2 picnic tables. And then just kind of a big open area here. I do see some flat areas though for tents. But this site has some shade, but a lot of the area is very sunny. And then here's your next door neighbor over here. This is site number 24, which is an ADA handicapped spot. And picnic table, looks like it gets pretty good shade. And some flat areas for tent. And there's your neighbor over that way. Also a neighbor right over here. So not terribly private, but it's a big site. This is site number 25. Boy, you could pull your vehicle back here pretty close to your picnic table if you wanted to. Picnic table, looks like a pretty sunny area. Nice stump if you like to sit on stumps next. Well, you can't have a fire, but if you could have a fire, you'd have a seat right next to the fire there. And then not seeing lots of, I think right here maybe is probably the flattest area for putting up a tent. You have a neighbor pretty far down the hill over here, over 100 feet. And your other neighbor would be up the hill there, and another 100 feet out that way. This is site number 26. Decent size area here for your vehicle. And then looks like you go down the hill over to the right, and you've got a couple of picnic tables, a non-functioning bear box. Site number 27. Park actually right next to the restroom. And then you can walk up the hill. I see 2 picnic tables and looking for a flat area. Probably not too far from the fire pit here might be some of the flat areas. There might be some further back up there too, to the right of that big tree. Right here isn't too bad. Over here on the right, there's a little bit of a slope, but it's not too bad. Here is site number 28. Nice area for parking your vehicle or an RV. And then you come down into the site. The picnic table at this time of day doesn't have, it's partial shade, but I think as the day goes on, the sun goes from right to left. The big trees there will give you some good shade in the afternoon. And then it looks like a tent pad over there further back. And beyond that looks like a main road coming in. So I'm not sure you'll get a huge amount of road traffic here at this place, but anyway, a nice size site. This is site number 29. Nice pull-out area here. Looks fairly flat for an RV or a trailer or just a vehicle. And then you come into the site around this way. And two picnic tables, both of which look like they get some shade. This one has such good shade. Some of the tree is actually over the top of the picnic table. And then area for a tent right there. Just be careful if it's going to rain, because that looks like a place where water would gather. And alternatively, it's kind of a slopey area there for a tent. It's a nice big site. Yeah, I think that's really the only place to put the tent is right here. But again, all the slope comes down into that area, so something to be careful of. But anyway, it's a nice big site. A lot of shade here in the site too. Site number 30. And there's a big long picnic table. Yeah, partial shade near that big tree. Looks like a pretty good spot over here on the left for a tent. Or I think you could probably also put one there. And this site has a lot of trees in it, very wooded, very nice. Not too far from the road. So if you put the tent there, you're not too far away from the road there. And then there across the street and down a little bit further up is that restaurant. Recording this later, this is my site number 30 after it's been set up. And you can see at this time of day, you don't get a lot of shade here on the picnic table. You do later in the day. That, you could put a tarp over the top of that. I just didn't want to go to the effort. And then I ended up setting my tent up in this area, which is a little bit tight to the table, but there are not a huge, I could have gone over here, but when I came yesterday, there was somebody next door, and I didn't want to be too close to them over there. And then you can also set up a tent over here, but I didn't want to set it up too close to the road. So anyways, that's why I picked that spot. But lots of great shade here in the site, and there's nobody behind you. It goes all the way back down that hill, way out in the distance is the road that you come in on to come into the campground. And a lot of great trees and paths here. So if you're coming as a family, kids, as long as they're old enough not to venture off on their own, lots of little fun little exploring areas here. And there's nobody on the other side for probably over 100 yards. There's a culvert down below here that separates two sides. And then, you're back a little bit from the road here. And the next door neighbor you can see would be over there. But there's some pretty good seclusion between the two sites. So from a privacy point of view, I think this is an awesome selection. Right across from site 30 is potable water. This is site number 31. It has a double wide parking area. And looks like 2 picnic tables, fire ring, big flat area over here for a tent or multiple tents. This is site number 32. Nice open area here for your vehicle. And then you walk up the hill. And a little entranceway here. Picnic table. And there's the next door site, though. Although that's the ADA site, which I just have a suspicion that they don't, because you have to have a handicap placard in order to stay at those sites. It's probably, they're probably filled on an infrequent basis. Just a guess. But anyway, but you do have a little bit of a closeness to that site. And then not seeing a great spot for a tent. This kind of takes you out of the site here. But a lot of slope everywhere in the site. Maybe you could do a small tent right there at the top of the hill there. It looks like it's flat a little bit, but this is probably better as a site for a trailer or a small tent. And this is site number 33. And boy, nice, pretty flat area here to pull in a trailer or an RV. And then picnic table, 2 picnic tables, big open area over there, which the site before that I just showed you comes out over into that area. I'm not sure what that area is for there. And then there's the restrooms over there. And then it looks like you're pretty close to your next door neighbor here, if there's somebody on that side. But a lot of big trees around the site, so it's pretty, it's a pretty good sized site. And like I said, if you're staying in an RV in that big driveway there, it's one of the biggest driveways here at the campground. That would certainly be an option. Site number 34. You pull in sideways in a pretty good sized area here, and then you walk down the hill, and there's your picnic table, fire ring, and a nice shady flat area for a tent. And the picnic table looks like it's well shaded. I am looking up here though. There are power lines running over the site. I guess that doesn't matter. Site number 35. It's an area to pull in. Picnic table. And looks like you would put your tent up right over here on the right. And you're not too far from the restrooms, but a good 100 feet away. Site number 37. Nice big area to park. And then you go down the hill and picnic table and fire ring, picnic table. At this time of day is not in the shade, but it looks like it will get a lot of shade because it's near some big trees. And I do see an area over there for a flat area for a tent. This is site number 38. Pull your vehicle up here, and then I can see a spot right there, which looks like it would be good for a tent. And over there, it looks like you get 2 picnic tables. And not a lot of shade for the picnic tables. And then I think this is your neighbor, pretty close next door. So this would probably not be one of my favorites. Here's site number 40. Nice parking area. A little bit of a slope to it if you're thinking about an RV. There's your picnic table, completely in the sun. And just like I mentioned with the site next door there, you're pretty close to your neighbor here. So I would probably not want to consider this site as well. Here is site number 41. Looks like it's fairly flat if you wanted to put a trailer here in the parking area. And then you come up in here, picnic table, fairly sunny. And I see a couple of areas that are potentials for a tent, but not, maybe actually behind that little tree, which is behind the picnic table. There might be an area there for a tent, and then your bathroom is right up the hill there, but not too close. Fairly private site. Another potable water station just to the left of number 41. And then over here on this side is number 42. And it's an occupied site, so I won't go back, but picnic table looks like it's in the sun. We got a nice secluded area for your tent. I can't tell whether there's another site behind that tent. So, but you have a little bit of distance from the site over here, but this whole inner row here on the left on this row, the sites are a little bit close and open to each other. And then over here is site 43. Not a great location for an RV here, but you could bring your vehicle in here. Picnic table is completely in the shade. Bathroom off in the distance. I see a couple of flat areas, maybe right over here. There's your neighbor over there, but you know, decent distance, probably just under 100 feet. Site number 44. 2 picnic tables, bare box, lots of shade, potable water right here. Your neighbor is pretty open to you, so not a lot of privacy to your neighbor in number 46. And I do see a few fairly flat areas back over there to the left and beyond that picnic table for a tent. This is site 45, and this is a pretty unique site. It has a long driveway here. It has hookups, and yeah, you can pull in and then pull straight out. So this is perfect for a large vehicle. And then over here, it looks like there's a couple of picnic tables. There's your next door neighbor, though they're pretty close to your picnic table over there. But if your picnic table, if you use this as your primary, you wouldn't be as close. And then big open area in the middle area here. Looks like a culvert of some type down there, maybe for water flow if there's a lot of rain. But if you have an RV or a big RV, this looks like the place to come. This is number 46. Pull-out area for your vehicle. Not tremendously flat though. You'd have to, the left side here is lower, so you'd have to raise up your RV a little bit on this side. 2 picnic tables back there. One's in the shade, one's not. To the right back there looks like a decent place for a tent. But again, you are right next to your neighbor on the right. And further back over beyond the site, you can see another neighbor. Site number 47. Pull out here for a very small trailer, but your vehicle will be fine. And then there's your picnic table. Looks like it gets a lot of sun. Functioning bear box. And in terms of a tent, I think maybe over there. It doesn't look terribly flat, but maybe doable further back over there. And then about 120 feet over, you can see the next site, but decent distance. You could also put your tent right here if you don't mind having it a little bit close to the roadway. But this looks like a nice pad and flat area for a tent. This is site number 48. And plenty of room for vehicle. If you have some lift things for your trailer, you could put it here, but you'd have to do some serious leveling on this area, in this area here. 2 picnic tables further back, nice shade. You can see another site, looks like about 60 feet beyond the last picnic table, further out that way. But then right over here on the right, you are pretty close to your neighbor over here on this side. I do see a couple of nice areas for tent. Maybe put your tent over here on the left for that. Here's site 49. Plenty of room for a vehicle. I think if you brought your trailer straight in, it looks fairly flat. And then further back up here is your picnic table. I do see some flat areas for a tent. Not a lot of shade though. It's pretty open in there with the picnic table. There's your neighbor over on the right, about 80 feet. And but yeah, it's an okay site. This is site number 50. And I see a picnic table right here on the left in the shade, a shorter one. Looks like a lot of these sites have 2 picnic tables. And then this looks like your main area back here. This picnic table is completely in the shade under that big tree. There's a bear box. And looks like it goes back pretty far. I can see where your neighbor's picnic table is way over there. You could put a tent just to the left and beyond the bear box there. I also think you could probably put one over there on the left, more of a shady area. Just checked out a bathroom. At this particular one, it looks like there might be at least 3, maybe 4 bathrooms filtered throughout, so not a big walk from no matter where you're staying. I see 3 doors here, so there's 3 restrooms here. And went inside, it was clean, plenty of toilet paper, looked like probably vault toilets. No water inside though, no sinks or anything, or showers. And I noticed a big exhaust thing, and you could hear the motor humming, so I think they try to exhaust out any smells, but I didn't catch any smells at all when I was inside, so I would give it top points for cleanliness. When you first come into the campground, this is where you would check in. They ask you to check in. There's a sign, and the camp host probably lives in that really big RV over there. And It's got a lot of different signage with rules, no campfires and all of that. Looks like you can get permits for day hiking. California state parks normally charge you if you're not staying at a campground. If you're staying at a campground, you don't usually have to pay any additional fees. Yeah, over there it says day use fee is $10. Some kind of a senior citizen discount. Additional vehicles are $10. And there are a few sites with electricity. Sites 1, 4, 21, 33, 45, 50. So 6 sites have hookups or electrical. And the campsites are $20. I'm reading this all backwards. Stone Creek Campground is up in the San Jacinto Mountains in the San Jacinto State Park. And when I arrived, I checked in early, and you have to check in with the camp host when you get there. So I met him. His name is Chip. Super nice guy. Had no problem with me going back early to my site. It was about 11:30. I came early so that I could record this video. And so yeah, check to see if your site is occupied the night before you arrive, and if it isn't and you're able to, you might want to try to come early. And I noticed as I went through the site there were signs up about no fires, and that actually the burn ban just went into effect. Right now it's early July, and I think it went into effect within the last week or two. But normally open campfires are allowed throughout the year, but right now no open campfires, no charcoal. If you're going to have a fire, although it's kind of warm for the summer, but if you are going to have an evening fire, you'll want to bring a propane gas system. And overall, I would say many good sites. They were all wooded. No long views like out over the mountains or anything, but what I think is really unique about this campground, and I think I mentioned it as I went through some of the sites, is they have these really cool trees. They're kind of gnarled branches, but this red wood that's on the trunks is just really unusual, really wild. I don't know the name of that species, but it's a pretty cool thing to see while you're up here. And let's see, most sites had reasonable privacy. I tried to point out when you were a little bit close to other sites. On some of them, as I mentioned, the bathrooms were really good, very clean. There's potable water throughout. And, Chip mentioned, I was showing you in there a number of wooden bear boxes. Most of them are old and small. And Chip mentioned that within a couple of weeks of when I was there, they're going to be putting in metal bear boxes everywhere throughout the site. So hopefully that won't affect some of the flat spots that I mentioned on the different sites, but they are about to add bear boxes, which should be a nice feature to have. Although Chip mentioned they've had a few sightings here and there with bears and mountain lions, but it sounds like it's kind of an infrequent thing. It's not like heavy activity here at this campground. As far as the bugs, it was early July. It was warm in the 80s when I was there, and when I was here. And it was a pretty decent level of bugs, but I was able, with bug spray on myself, plus I have one of those mosquito coils that you burn and it creates a smoke. I think it's a sage kind of a smell that the bugs don't like, and that kind of kept them at bay, so it wasn't overall a big issue. Several hiking trails, which I pointed out in the video, which look like nice short little day hikes you could do. Good cell reception. I have Verizon. I had 2 solid bars throughout the entire trip. Didn't really have any downtime at all with my cell phone. In the evenings, I was here 2 nights. There were a few people, that were having good times in their campsites, but everybody was pretty respectful to turn down their volumes at 10 o'clock, which is what the rules are for quiet time. And I was there on a Tuesday and Wednesday night, and it probably was only about 20-25% full in the summertime. So If you can, I think coming during the week would be a good time. I'm sure it's much more crowded on the weekends. And overall, I would give this place a very strong recommendation. It's well run, it's beautiful, and I think you could have a good time here.